Don't go messing around in the crawl space. When I first moved into the house, I thought that the quiet would be the best part. After years of apartment living, I was finally looking forward to no footsteps above me, no screaming kids in the hall, no one slamming doors at 2 a.m. Just blissful peace and quiet. The place wasn't much. One story, tucked down a dead-end road at the edge of town. The rent was cheap. Looking back, probably a bit too cheap. But at the time, I was more grateful than suspicious. The landlord, an older man named Mr. Miller, barely looked up from his clipboard when I signed the lease. He just said, "Don't go messing around in the crawl space," and handed me the keys. I kind of laughed awkwardly, but he didn't so much as flinch. For the first month or so, everything was fine, peaceful even. But then I started to notice things. A chair slightly moved, blinds tilted differently than when I had left. A mug turned the wrong way. But I figured that it must have been in my head, until I found the first picture. It was sitting on the mantle, a picture of my living room with the lights off. But in the middle of the shot was me. I was asleep on the couch. What the? How? I haven't had anyone over. How was there a picture of me sleeping on my own couch? I checked every lock and window, called Mr. Miller, trying to sound calm. He said, "Oh, that must have been left behind. The old tenant was a photographer. You probably just look like the guy in the picture." Then he abruptly hung up. God, why was he so odd? I had asked myself. But for my own sanity, I wanted to believe him. But 2 days later, I found another picture, this time on my kitchen counter. It showed my bedroom. Same blanket, same sheets. Except I had just changed them that morning, so it couldn't be old. That night, I left the light on. Every noise set me on edge. At around 3 a.m., I heard a faint click, like a camera shutter. I sprung up, listening, but nothing. When I left for work the next morning, there was a new picture taped to my front door. It was a close-up of my face, sleeping. That was it. I called Mr. Miller again, but no one answered. So I called the police, and they arrived about an hour later. They looked around for a bit, and they said that there was no sign of forced entry. They told me to change the locks, so I did. But the pictures kept coming. Every morning, a new one somewhere in the house. Each one closer. Each one taken more recently. I started tearing the place apart, looking for hidden cameras, behind the vents, inside lamps, under the floorboards, but nothing. Finally, I remembered Mr. Miller's warning. Don't go messing around in the crawl space. I almost didn't check, but at that point, I was desperate. The hatch was in a hallway closet, a square of old plywood with a rusty ring latch. When I pulled it open, a wave of cold air drifted out. It smelled like damp soil and something faintly metallic. I found a flashlight and took it with me. The beam caught dozens of nails driven into the floor joist, each one holding a single photograph. Every one was of the same room, my living room. Different angles, different nights. In some pictures, the room was empty. In others, there were people that I didn't recognize. In most of them, these people were sleeping. Someone had been documenting this space long before I ever moved in. Then, just beyond the light, something glinted. I crawled in further. It was a small stool, a cracked mug, and an old camera, the kind that took real film, sitting on top of a tripod. The stool was positioned right under a vent that looked directly into my living room, and on the ground beside it, a jacket, old and dusty, but I recognized it. It was the same jacket that Mr. Miller wore when he gave me the keys. I scrambled out and slammed the hatch shut. I should have left then, but I told myself I'd finish the month, save money, and get out of there. But that night, I barely slept. The next morning, I woke up to find the crawl space door wide open and a new picture taped to the inside of my bedroom window. It showed me kneeling at the crawl space, looking at the camera tripod. I was at work when I finally decided to move out. I called Mr. Miller again, but a woman answered. She sounded confused when I asked for him. "Mr. Miller," she said. "You must be mistaken. Mr. Miller passed away years ago. I'm his daughter. I've been renting out the old properties." I froze. "No," I said. "I met him last month, and he showed me the house." She was silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, "Sir, that house hasn't been shown to anyone. It's been vacant for the last 2 years." I hung up and drove straight there. The front door was already open. Inside, the walls were covered in pictures, hundreds of them, all of me. Sleeping, eating, reading, even one of me standing at the mantel holding the very first picture. And there, in the corner, was the same jacket. There was a picture sticking out of the pocket. When I looked at it, it was a shot of me, standing right there, in that very moment, looking at the jacket. I dropped it and ran. When the police went back later on, they said that the house was empty. No pictures, no jacket, nothing. About 3 months later, when I opened the mailbox at my new place, there was an envelope inside. No return address. Inside was a single picture, a picture of me, asleep in my new bed. Don't answer after midnight. I lived by myself in a small apartment above a laundromat. It's not much, but after years of moving from location to location, I like the quiet. I work remotely now, or at least that's what I tell people. The truth is, I've built up quite the little nest egg, and even with moderate investment gains, I'll never have to work again. I used to be a contractor for a government research program, something involving signal interference and, well, time distortion, I guess you'd call it. They never gave us the full picture. We just ran data, cataloged patterns, and occasionally worked on some new tech. But most importantly, we kept quiet. But I started having personal issues with the ethics of the program and where it was headed, so I quit last year. Or at least, I thought I did. About 3 weeks ago, I started getting phone calls in the middle of the night. Always at exactly 12:13 a.m., always from the same number. My number. At first, I figured it was some kind of tech glitch, but it kept happening. Every night. Same time, same number. I called the carrier. They said there were no incoming calls logged to my line. When I tried calling the number back, it went straight to my own voicemail. The first few nights, I ignored it. Then, curiosity got the better of me, so I stayed up. When the phone started ringing again, at 12:13, right on the dot, I answered. For a few seconds, there was just static, then a faint, broken whisper. It was my own voice. It said, "Don't go to sleep. They found me." Then silence. The next morning, I convinced myself it was some kind of prank, but part of me knew better. There was something in the tone, something I recognized. By the third night, I started hearing more on the line. Background noises, metallic hums, a deep, low pulse like the sound the lab machines used to make. The next night, the voice said something different. "You have to leave before they reset it." Now that stopped me cold, because reset it was a phrase we had used during testing. Whenever a simulation went unstable, the system would autocorrect, wiping everything back to its previous state, effectively resetting it. I hadn't thought about that place in months, but now it was all coming back. The failed experiments, the distorted signals we traced to no known origin, the times our readings synced exactly to human electroencephalogram or EEG patterns. Basically, our time distortion tech would sometimes mimic human brainwaves. We used to joke that maybe we were listening to echoes of ourselves, voices from another timeline, but no one laughed after the first incident. The night one of our analysts disappeared mid-transmission. She was standing at her table and quite literally disappeared in what I could only explain as a poof of electrified mist. After searching for answers but getting nowhere, I quit the following week. We all did. Now sitting in my dark apartment, phone buzzing in my hand, I realized something sickening. I wasn't getting calls from anyone else. I was getting them from another version of myself. a version that hadn't escaped. That night, I tried to record the call. When it came through, the voice was panicked. "They're coming. You have to destroy the device." "What device?" I whispered. There was static. Then, "The one you built, or will build. It's a signal beacon. It's how they find us. Don't answer again. Don't let the loop close." Then silence. Except I could hear something faint through the phone, a low creaking noise. Then my own voice in the background, not from the call, but from behind me. I turned, and that's when I saw the red light blinking from the corner of my apartment. A small black transmitter, the same kind we used in the lab, but this one is modified with some new tech. It emitted small pulses of energy about once every second. I don't remember what happened next, just flashes of memory. A knock on my door, the phone ringing, the sound of my own voice screaming through the static. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. My phone was on the table. The screen was cracked. I had a new voicemail, but there was no number listed. When I pressed play, I heard myself, calm but tired. I sounded exhausted and defeated. Other me had told me, "Don't answer after midnight. Just let it ring. You can't stop once you pick it up." Then the line cut. I stared at the phone until it went dark. And now tonight, as I sit here writing this, I can already feel it buzzing beside me. It's 12:13 a.m. I don't answer, but from somewhere inside me, almost like an echo, I already know what comes next. Because about 3 weeks ago, I started getting phone calls in the middle of the night. Don't stop walking. I've never been the type to get scared in the woods. If anything, I've always liked being alone out there. No emails, no noise, no people. Last spring, after a rough couple weeks of work, I decided to take a solo hike on a trail that I've never tried before. A coworker had mentioned it to me, said that it was peaceful, and that barely anyone used it. When I looked it up later, I couldn't find much online. No official trail name, just a pin someone had dropped near the old quarry on the edge of town. That should have been my first red flag. I left around noon. It was one of those mild days where the sun feels gentle and the air smells like rain that never came. When I pulled into the dirt parking lot, there were no other cars. There were no trailhead signs, just a narrow path disappearing into the trees. I texted my buddy, "Gonna try out that trail. If I don't make it back by dark, assume I got eaten by a bear," half joking. Then I locked the car and started walking. For the first hour, it was perfect. Birds, wind, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot that always makes you feel like you're somewhere special. The trail wound uphill, dipped near a creek, then curved deeper into the woods. After about an hour and a half, I noticed something strange. The path had narrowed, barely wide enough for one person. And the trees looked the same. Same crooked trunks, same forked branches. I thought maybe I'd double back somehow, but there were no footprints and no signs of disturbance in the leaves leading forward. Then I started seeing things left behind. A single hiking pole, a torn strap from a backpack, an old thermos lying in the dirt half buried, like it had been there for months. But the items didn't look weathered enough for that. That's when I felt the first flicker of unease. I pulled out my phone and opened the trail hiking app. The GPS showed my blue dot blinking, then jumping a half-mile north, then back again, then no signal. I tried to retrace my steps, but the trail behind me didn't look right anymore. There was no trail, just trees. I told myself to stay calm. I'll follow the slope downhill, find the creek, then find the road, that's all. But then I heard it, a snap somewhere off to my left, like a branch breaking under someone's foot. I froze. I waited, but nothing. About 15 minutes later, I spotted movement ahead. A figure. Gray hoodie, dark jeans. I called out, "Hey, do you know the way back?" They didn't answer, just turned slightly, then walked off the trail and into the trees. I jogged ahead trying to catch up, but when I reached the spot, no one was there. No footprints, just the forest, silent and still. That silence was strong. No birds, no insects. Just a breeze barely moving through the branches, sharp and empty. By the time the sun dipped behind the ridge, I'd been walking for almost 5 hours. My legs ached. Every direction looked the same. Endless gray bark and fading light. That's when I saw the campsite. A small clearing with an old fire ring, an old rusty tin can, and what looked like the remains of a tent, torn, half collapsed. There were a pair of boots on the ground, children's size, way too small to be mine. On a nearby tree, someone had carved symbols into the bark, really deep scratches, like arrows pointing backwards down the path. They looked fresh. I thought maybe the person I'd seen earlier had marked them. I followed the arrows. An hour later, I realized they led me in a full circle, back to the same clearing. Same boots, same carved tree. Only this time, my flashlight beam caught something I swear hadn't been there before. A scrap of fabric snagged on a branch, dark gray, like a piece torn from their hoodie. The air felt colder then, and I don't mean temperature. I mean that bone-deep cold that comes when you realize you're not alone. Every few minutes, I'd hear movement behind me, then in front, sometimes off to the side. Leaves crunching, soft, deliberate. When I stopped, it stopped. When I walked, it followed. At one point, I turned off my light, thinking maybe I could catch whoever it was. The darkness swallowed me whole. That's when I heard breathing. Not mine, just behind my shoulder. I turned the light back on and swung around. Nothing. But I started running anyway. After what felt like forever, I could see that there was a clearing through the trees. The trailhead. Finally. Except when I stepped out, something was off. There was a car parked there, but it wasn't mine. It was definitely the same dirt lot, but a different car entirely. A dark blue sedan, dusty and still, as if it's been there for weeks. I walked closer. The windows were fogged from the inside. Someone had tucked a phone under the wipers against the windshield. It had a cracked screen, but I could tell that it was on. When I picked it up, it was playing a voice memo, a man's voice. Ragged, whispering. If anyone finds this, I think I'm being followed. I don't know where I am. Then silence. Then faintly, from inside the car, don't stop walking. I jumped back so fast that I nearly fell. I didn't realize that someone was inside the car. I stepped closer, shining my light through the glass. The seats were empty, but I swear I had just heard someone. Inside on the passenger seat was a folded map. Hand-drawn trails crisscrossing through the quarry woods, and written across the top in black marker were 3 words. Turn back now. There was no way I was headed back out on the trail, and assuming that someone had stolen my car, I just decided to walk towards town. When I finally made it to the first paved road, dawn was breaking. A park ranger found me about an hour later, barefoot, shaking, with no clear sense of direction. They searched the area for days. No blue sedan, no campsite, no trail markers at all. But it turns out my car was somehow at the parking lot after all. Later, when I checked the GPS data on my phone, it showed something impossible. My walking path looping over itself again and again, ending in the same exact coordinates of where I parked. Except, according to the ranger's map, there was no trail there, just woods. It's been nearly 3 months and I still can't sleep, because sometimes in the middle of the night, I hear that voice again, whispering from somewhere just outside my window. Don't stop walking.